Hey everybody, my name is Mike Glover and welcome to American Contingency. I wanted to do this first video blog post to talk to you guys about what our mission statement is and where we go from here. First off, I want to describe to you guys who I am. My name is Mike Glover and I'm the CEO and owner of a company called Philcraft Survival Incorporated. Our focus has always been preparedness, self-reliance, you taking care of you. Our motto is, you are your own first response, because we believe that the more you instill values, mindset, and technical skill sets in yourself, the better off you'll be prepared, and the better off you'll be able to survive the worst case scenario. I started this company after a career in special operations in the U.S. Army, as well as a contracting career as a security consultant with the Central Intelligence Agency. I've been all over the world. I've deployed to war 9 times. I have 5, 6 rotations outside of the theater of war, deploying to the worst places in the world. Yemen, Pakistan, Iraq, Afghanistan, Niger, Africa. The list goes on. I started Philcraft Survival with the idea that no matter what your political affiliation, that natural disasters, man-made disasters, they're equal opportunists. It doesn't care what color, creed, race, it will destroy you the same. In special operations, we understand that going into the worst case scenario, a foreign fighter safe house in the middle of Iraq, that we're going to be confronted with evil, with bad people wanting to do bad things to good people. And so we plan. We prepare, we rehearse, we equip ourselves with the best equipment on the planet. And we go out every single night conducting operations. And we're successful. So I asked myself, what led to that success? It's not luck, it's not an accident. It has everything to do with your willingness to prepare and the construct and process in which you implement. So I thought, being a civilian now, that there's a big gap in this understanding. We just kind of wing it. What I've realized being in civilian life is nobody really knows what the hell they're doing. We're just trying to figure it out. And so if I introduce some processes, a little bit of organization, technical skill sets training, that I can make people better prepared. Whether you're a single mom, a family, no matter who you are, you deserve the opportunity to understand the same processes that I learned in special operations from the U.S. government. Philcraft teaches all over the United States in technical training. We offer solutions and products, medical equipment, first aid, thanks to North American Rescue, survival kits, holsters. We try to provide as many solutions as we can. We hope to grow and be better off as a company tomorrow than we were today. What I also realized is, after doing our podcast and providing content and information, that there's big gaps in understanding what preparedness really is. Our motto, you are your own first response, is super important to understand, because there is a circumstance in reacting to a threat where you're not going to have the time to pick up the phone and call 911. And now we live in a world where really, I think it's the first time in my history on this planet that the police officers might never come. I want you to understand my background, because the root of everything that I'm doing for American Contingency has to do with my understanding of survival and preparedness. In special operations, I was many things. I was a sniper in the Commanders and Extremists Force. I was a sniper team sergeant that had an operational detachment of Green Berets. I was a joint terminal air controller. I controlled aircraft to drop bombs and shoot guns. I was a breacher. I was a sergeant major, a special operations sergeant major. And so I worked my way from E1 as a private in the infantry to E9 and decided I wanted to do something else, which was contracting. I got out, started contracting, started seeing the world and actually getting paid for the first time, and realized I wanted to do something different. and Philcraft was that difference. As I operate in the world of preparedness every single day, I understand the processes, the mindset, the psychology, the behaviors that are all part of all these processes. And I look at probabilities. I study strategic operations that have failed and what it means to lead to war. You're not at war because there's a whole bunch of things that were done right. You're at war because a whole bunch of things were done wrong. Good, bad, or indifferent, no matter how you look at it, war is the worst case scenario. So I understand the pattern. I understand what it looks like when something is going wrong and not fitting in the pattern. And I pay attention to that. I don't even have to deliberately or consciously do that. I just see it. Taking bits and pieces of information and processing it in my strategic and operational mind, and then I can come up with predictions. It's not magic. It's just an analytical process mixed with a little bit of creativity to forecast the future. And so last year I did a podcast, and during that podcast I was asked, what are the worst case scenarios? If you had to line out the worst case scenarios, what would they be? And the two specific things that I chose was one, a pandemic, because I understand the history of pandemics. The history of pandemics in this country killed hundreds of thousands of people, and killed millions of people throughout the world. This pandemic, known as the Spanish influenza, took place during World War I. On top of a war, we were dealing with 50 million people, human beings, killed across the globe. And so a pandemic in any form would destroy not just lives, but infrastructure, society as we know it. The second thing I chose was a race war, because I know that race is that one element socially that we be willing to go to war with or for. So the combination of these two things is, of course, the worst case scenario. And in a way, I think we're living that. How did this start? So a man, an African-American man, was killed by a police officer in a clear case of police brutality. I won't describe the case because you know it. It's been in headlines and you know it. This was used as a catalyst, not for change, but a catalyst for violence, for murder. You have to understand how insurgencies work to understand the adaptation of insurgent elements in opportunistic moments throughout our history. The Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS. I could name 100 insurgent organizations, despite your feelings on the right or the wrong side of that history, and describing how organizations, meaning people band together with a common goal or vision in mind, utilize opportunities like the George Floyd tragic murder to get their point across. Not just verbally, but violently. Whether you're an anti-fascist, Black Lives Matter, or any other group or organization, you have to understand their end state. What is the end state of Antifa, of BLM? What do you think the end state is? Is it peace? Is it change? To do that research, I would advocate that you do that on your own. Dig into these organizations and understand the root of what they want to accomplish. The violence that you see, the murders that you see, statistically, more people were murdered, more African Americans were murdered during the Black Lives Matter protest than were actually killed last year by white police officers. So we're focusing on the wrong thing. We don't even have to think about that anymore because that's not the agenda. That's not the objective. It's something more deeply rooted. And so I started American Contingency. Why? Because for the first time in my life, I felt insecurity in my own country. You know how it feels going from Afghanistan to Yemen, flying back into the United States where you feel freedom, security, and safety? Yeah, there's a whole bunch of inner city violence. There's crimes that happen, murders that happen. But going from a collapsed dictatorship, a communist government, terrorism, the threat of potentially getting shot, killed, murdered, kidnapped, held for ransom, the list goes on. And then flying back into the United States of America is a completely different feeling. It's that global perspective that's given me the perspective that I have today. Seeing Africans in Niger, Africa dying from things that are just ins and outs, outpatient care here in the United States of America. On top of the fact that we have a pandemic, which is a separate topic altogether. So I told you our motto is you are your own first response, which means I believe that you should be self-reliant for your own security, defense, and even sustainability. You should have the solutions figured out and not the dependence on any institution or any one person. The first time I realized we had a problem was within the U.S. government and local populations in cities and states across our nation, where politicians shut down their first responders and police forces from responding to people's cries for help. Violence, murder. Nobody came for those people. Like nobody came for George Floyd, nobody came for any of the people that were killed, which is over 25 people. Nobody came for the people's businesses who were burned down to the ground. And so there was nobody to prevent any of that chaos. Good citizens sat inside their homes and watched the TV, probably you, in disgust, in awe. And the cops, the first responders that I respect, that I train, they sat on the sidelines. So I realized there is no shield. There is no group or organization that's going to come and save your ass. I think the government, because I worked for the government for my entire life. Since I was 17 years old, I worked for the U.S. government. The most inefficient organization in the world is government. The institutional bureaucracy that I've faced in Libya, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, all over the world, despite my own position in special operations, was mind-numbing, disappointing, disheartening. So I know the system is broke, but it's better here in our country than it is in anywhere in the world. And other people in the world know this. They would give everything to be citizens of our country. But what are we doing? Well, there's a fringe movement in our country that's trying to burn it down to the ground. And as a patriot, as somebody who loves this nation, who's lost brothers in arms, killed in IEDs, in grenade attacks, in shootings, I refuse to give this country up. More than that, I refuse to allow people to be victims because of the government's incompetence. It's a leadership deficiency. Some people say, oh yeah, it's just not their fault, but it is. The government, the policymakers, it's their fault. So the question is, what are we going to do about it? And the answer is American Contingency. I thought strategically, I planned, I did a lot of thinking and praying and trying to figure out a way. And here's the way. First, we will establish a network. That network is going to start with your email. Minimal data. I don't want your personal information. I just want your email because I want a communication plan as a start point to be able to disseminate this information, but educational information, force protection information, intelligence information to allow you to make better decisions in protecting yourself and your family. I'm going to collect as many emails as possible. You need to spread the love. AmericanContingency.com and tell them to subscribe. Send it to your friends. Send it to your family. Send it to every single person you know on every social media platform possible before you get shut down. Because it's almost inevitable at this point that you're going to get shut down. That's why I started a proprietary serviced website to be able to allocate and disseminate information without the use of any other platforms. The other platforms are just a bonus, but we don't have to depend on them. And we will build the contingency for no communication because eventually we'll get unplugged, but that's okay. We'll already have a plan that's in action. The idea starts with a network. As many people that want to be involved as possible. Second, right now working with great Americans who decided to give me their time, volunteer their time, and their money. This is going to be expensive, but we're going to get it done. Because everything I'm doing for you is not about business and it's not about making money because I'm not going to ask you for money. I'm not going to ask you to pay for anything. We'll have a Venmo account linked to this. And if you find value, you donate money. If you don't, because you don't have the money. If you don't, because you don't see the value, then you don't have to do anything. But I'm not charging you for any service that we provide. Second, we're going to roll out information, intelligence, analyzed intelligence that's going to give you a better picture of what's going on. I'm going to track open source every single organization that I think is a threat to this country. And then I'm going to disseminate all their actions and all the violence and all the propensity for violence to make sure that you have the information necessary to make a good decision. So when you're in New Jersey and you decide to go to Philadelphia, you don't drive through a protest and get shot for driving through, or worse yet, killed. If you're flying from Philadelphia to Utah, that you get the information that you need so you don't land into chaos. This is called force protection measures. We usually send these out in sit reps. That's brief, concise bullet points of the consolidated information that's corroborated. Meaning we take factual sources and stitch it together, corroborate it with other factual sources, and then write out in clear form what you need to do based off the information that's provided. So it might say, avoid Provo, Utah at all cost. Keep a 15-mile radius away from the area of this downtown square. Maybe, just maybe, that could have prevented somebody from being shot. I don't know if you remember, but somebody was shot in Provo, Utah by a member of Antifa. In addition to that, we're going to provide a network, a social network to allow you to communicate and to understand who is in your vicinity. Because if you need a quick reaction force, who's coming? If you're a single mom in Prescott, Arizona, and you don't have a large group of family and friends, or maybe you do, but they can't provide the protection that you need when a neighborhood of armed thugs are walking through your neighborhood, professing their racist ideology, waiting in a mob mentality to drag you out of your home, then you can have somebody to come to your rescue. The idea with American Contingency is to bring Americans together because you are an asset. One, because you're a patriot and because you're American. Two, because you might have a skill set that might save somebody's life. Med, intelligence, self-defense, security, the list goes on. We will build this network to protect each other because the government is not doing it for us. In addition to that, I plan to start working on the back end on an app. This application will be utilized offline, meaning on the internet, and not piggyback to CDMA or GSM towers. This way, you could communicate to each other, you could report, you could analyze information, and you can get content. Content is the last part that we're going to provide. Education. I am going to rally the troops. I am going to get as many people as possible as part of this so we can come together when shit hits the fan, because it will. My prediction, November 2nd, the presidential election this year, the general election this year, the countdown begins from November 2nd to now. Because on November 2nd, they will use this as an opportunity, no matter how it goes, to incite violence, to allow them to facilitate the growth and evolution of their radical ideology, and kill, murder, and destroy American lives. All it takes is one shooting between civilians from a movement and the police to incite violence in each and every major metropolitan area and everything in between. And the question is, are you prepared? We're not prepared. But in mass, under a social network that's called American Contingency, we will. I love you guys. I'm doing this because nobody else will. I'm doing this because I have the confidence that myself, my team, and my network can put this together and do something positive for this country, to act as the shield for this country. God bless you guys.